Okay, welcome back. This is going to be the tutorial dealing with this car here, the Maluch, which is right there. Now, as you're looking at it, this is actually a cute little game style type car to have in this video game. And it is cute looking. But this is actually a Pulaski Fiat 126. So it's a very real car. My understanding, this thing is supposed to be some of these were produced in Bielsko-Biała, so that's in Poland. So basically this is a Polish vehicle. It's a cute little car, I like it. I would own something. Its simplicity is what makes it appealing to me. A little trunk, you can rebuild this thing, do the body parts just like all the other cars. Nothing's changed. This has a low resale value, even though that everything's new. It doesn't bother me so much because that's not why I got the car. I got the car for the mechanical knowledge, and that is what we're going to go over with this thing. So just go ahead and get this thing started right now. Now we come to look at the vehicle. You will see that it looks like it's a big, huge, complicated engine, but really it isn't. This fan cover, this is basically more like, in the States we would know it as a fan shroud, which comes over and covers, and this thermostat cover, this would be part of that shroud. What this is an air-cooled, two-cylinder engine. Kind of reminds me of a very advanced looking lawnmower engine. See, you can tell that it's air-cooled. Now, I'm assuming that this is probably running on a 6 or a 9 volt system. And the reason for that is this is just a generator. It's not an alternator. It runs off a belt that turns off with the crankshaft. This thing is basically, as you see it going through the shroud, there's a fan on this side to help maintain the coolness. There it is. So from what I'm seeing is that the belt drives the generator, which in turn also runs the fan, blows air in this shroud, so it can blow air through here to keep this engine cool. This here is the fuel pump for the system. Now, the air cleaner is here. There we go. Yes, they all use clips. A lot of them do. And on some cars we'll have clips for the distributor. There it is. It's a simple little air cleaner filtering system. Now, this is one side, that's the other side. So yeah, these also will come apart as separate pieces. This is your fuel filter. Now, as you can see here, your plugs will be located about right here. This is also the head, which covers both sides. And what I mean by both sides is, like on a motorcycle, if you're familiar, those who are familiar with the motorcycle, you got individual cylinders. You have them here too, see? And this head will cover both of them. Now, the only reason why I'm surmising that this is probably like a 6 or 9 volt system, because I don't see where it would need more than that. This is using a points condenser system. You can see it in the detail. It is clearly a point system. Not to mention it's using what would be considered a common coil for such a system. This engine head cover here. And as you can see, we got our rocker arms. Now, this is not a thermostat housing. As you can see, this is part of the air induction for the carburetor, because it uses a very basic carburetor system. See what I mean? So basically that's the dealings within the engine. Also within this cover down here, you got pieces like for the crank that are there. See, you have the centrifuge housing, then behind it is the pulley, and then you have yourself the cover, and then in here there'll be other assorted stuff. I'll just go ahead and show you. Now, when you're disassembling the parts that are on this engine, they have a little bit more going on here. And some of the stuff that they got going on here, for example, like timing gears. And I wasn't talking about the one I just took off. I'm talking about this one here on the crankshaft. It actually has its own timing gear that could be removed. Plus, this is also equipped with a forward and rear bearing housing. So you have to remember when you take off one side, there's another one on the other side too. And they have to come off or you'll never get this out. So even though you get all this out, and yes, there are pistons in here and you get all that out, and you still can't get this out, the chances are is that you forgot this cover. Because there's one on this side and there's one on the transmission side. You may have to double check that to see if you've forgotten it. That includes for taking it off as well. So I'm busy here putting this together, and you know what this kind of reminds me of? This kind of reminds me of like one of those Wisconsin engines, like the ones you would use for the Bobcats, the older ones, the 600 series types. I think there's 6. You know, the one with the square body and it has the V2 Wisconsin engine. Kind of reminds me of that. Now there was something I wanted to point out over here. I was in the middle of this. I had to do this tutorial over quite a couple of times because sometimes there's stuff that I forget and I had to redo it over again. And or I mess up and I have to do it over again. It's annoying. It's actually getting harder for me to do these kind of things. And one of the things I keep forgetting is that to tell you that there is no oil filter for this thing. I haven't seen it. There's just this dipstick. So this is using a basic filtering system. Because I can't see where the oil filter is anywhere on this engine at all. All I find is the fuel filter and that's it. So but there's an engine strainer inside the engine and I'm thinking maybe that's what it uses it. But nevertheless though, it doesn't have an oil filter. So it's just the oil stick here. See? That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like having an advanced looking lawnmower engine. Because this is something that I would see on one of those. But that's okay though. I still think it's cool. I like European cars like this to begin with. And I always wanted to get a few of them. So I can guess some ways, even though I don't have one, I do. You know what I'm saying? Okay. One of the things I wanted to show you here is that we're going to pull this transmission off in the rear. So I'm going to show you how this gearbox works. Now, this gearbox, from what I'm looking at in the engineering design, apparently there are 2 functions that this will be for. And that's only because I'm going by what I've seen displayed in the game. It may not be, but it's what it looks like it could be. So from what I'm looking at, this is doing 2 parts. This is not only making the car go forward and backward, but it's also part of the suspension support, because you have one up here that's towards the front, and by the support bracket you could tell clearly this is a cover and that this is part of the that goes to the body of the vehicle. So this is a spot that has to be disconnected. As you see, it uses a broad A style type suspension set which connects to 2 locations, and their pivot points are pretty simple. Now you have to disconnect the bushing that's here to gain access to that. Plus, if you notice, the tire is on and the axle is missing. So when you pull the axles, you don't need to have that tire off to do that process. And neither do you need to use it for this drive axle joint in case you have to gain access to that. Almost makes you want to put your hand on it and roll it just to see if the bearing is bad. Now we have ourselves what they call flywheel cover. I think we call it an inspection plate. But here you go. And then your starter. And now we could pull the transmission itself off. So as you see, that's pretty easy. It's a very easy job to do. It's not very complicated.